you have that conscious awareness that you can't turn back the clock. You have to live with knowing what could have been. And also, you see the tears in God's eyes, being like, I wish you would have just listened a bit more. Okay, so what is hell? Is it a place? Is it a state of being? These are questions that I've been thinking a lot about on my Christian walk recently. And surprisingly, Christopher Nolan's version of the Odyssey really resonated with me in regards to hell as a concept. One might think like Greek mythology, like what does this have to do with the Christian understanding of hell? However, Christopher Nolan, he imbued the Christian ethic into this version of the Odyssey, and I really think that he hit the nail on the head as it pertains particularly to what is hell. We can look to many scenes in the movie to glean understandings of what really is hell. However, I want to focus in on one scene in particular. In the scene, Odysseus, he's tied to the ship's mast, and him and his crew, they're on the part of the journey where they're passing the sirens. Odysseus is tied to the mast because he wants to hear the enchanting song of the sirens and to be the only person to survive the experience. And when I watched the scene, I was really caught off guard. I was caught off guard by Odysseus' reaction to hearing the sirens. I was expecting Odysseus to just want to like run to the island to where the sirens are because he's chasing that pleasure of the pure thrill of hearing that song, right? The pure pleasure. However, he was just being absolutely tormented. And it's really interesting because it makes you think about the relationship between pleasure and torment, right? Is there a degree of pleasure that you can experience to experience torment? But that's besides the point. When they finally pass the island, one of the crew members asks Odysseus, like, hey, like, what was that experience like for you? And Odysseus says this, and I want to read it to you. He says this: it's the delicious itch you cannot scratch that pertains to all the things you wanted to be, and then all the things you wish you never wished for. You see, it's this conscious awareness that you can't turn back time, and knowing darn well you messed up. However, I would slightly alter it to fit my understanding of hell. So this, obviously, in Odysseus's, opinion, is like him thinking about all his desires, right, relating to the past. But when you think about, dying and seeing God, right, the way I think about it is that imagine like God sits you down and you see the timeline of your life. You see your life replayed back as a movie. And God points out to you all the times he tried to communicate with you, all of the, major and minor mistakes that you made. And you realize, and then he shows you the vision of your life that could have been. He shows you, if you had been trying to actively seek a deeper relationship with him and be a bit more obedient to him, right? You see the flourishing that would have been. But in your own stubborn heart, you chose not to listen. And you have that conscious awareness that you can't turn back the clock. You have to live with knowing what could have been. And also, you see the tears in God's eyes, being like, I wish you would have just listened a bit more. And the intense regret of letting down your godly father. I think that really, for me, has been what I've been thinking about in terms of hell recently. Is it's not this just like insane punishment, right? That you experience by being cast away from God, right? It's this never-ending torment of knowing what could have been if you had developed a deeper relationship with God and followed him a bit more. And so, when I saw that scene, I saw the torment in Odysseus' face, the just pure anguish. It made me think about what are the ways in my life in which I'm dishonoring God. Like, I'm not listening to him to the full extent. in what areas am I not putting all my trust in him in? And I think this is something that we should all do. We should all think about, hey, like, what are the areas that I'm falling short? And like, none of us are obviously going to be perfect in this journey, but it's important to strive to the best of our ability to deepen that relationship with God and to follow him and to put trust in him to the best ability that we can, so that we can lessen the extent of that regret down the road. So the natural question is, how do we limit the odds of this happening, right? And the first step obviously is learn God, like who is he and his will for you, right? Like developing an active faith life. Like, are you praying? Are you going to Sunday services, right? Mass, communion, confession, like all of the components of the Christian walk, right? Depending on, which denomination you fall in. Like, are you actively making that a priority in your life on a daily and, weekly basis, right? So I think thinking about, like, if you do pray every day, like what time of the day do you pray? Do you give your undivided attention to God? Well, if you, go to mass or Sunday service or whatever, like, what's your mindset going into that? Are you there to just be there to give God worship? Or are you there to be transformed? Is there an intentionality behind why you're there, right? Being truly present. So I think that is important to think about. And then Psalm 46:10 is be still and know that I'm God. And I think this one is particularly relevant to today's day and age, right? Because a lot of us are super distracted. And this is something that I really struggle with personally. And it's something I'm trying to figure out how to manage myself, is I'm highly distracted. And when we're distracted, it puts this kind of limit on how much we can develop in our intimacy with God, right? Because if we're, bouncing around all the time, or we're never truly present, we can really get stunted in this walk, right? And so we live in this distracted era where we're, constantly stimulating our brains, that we can't just sit still. And I think about it as like an actual conversation with God. Like, imagine that God was a person across the table from you. If you were on your phone listening to Spotify, listening to an audiobook, watching a YouTube video, looking at the soccer game on the TV on the other side of the restaurant, how much can you actually listen to the conversation that you're supposed to be having with God at that table, right? And I think that this is a trap that a lot of us, fall into, is we're constantly distracted. And I think in a culture where we try to optimize things, right? We want to be as productive as possible, right? We try to keep adding things into our life. And I'm starting to think that the best lives are the ones in which we reduce, in which we can pour a lot into a few things rather than a little into a lot of things, right? If we think about our life as a series of buckets and water as our energy, as our devotion, right? If there's 10 buckets there, your thing of water is not going to be able to fill them all up, right? And so it's like, what things can I shed, in this season of life? For me, I'm not sure that I have the healthiest relationship with Spotify. Like, I'm always listening to music in the background, and it sometimes helps me think, sure, but there's this like constant noise, right? And I can't be still. It impacts my ability to sit in silence and pick up on the things that God wants me to pick up on, to hear his voice, right? To see his signs even. And so my question to you is, what are the ways in which you're not able to sit still? Can you be bored? in this hyper stimulated reality that we all live in right now, right? Like, can you sit still and know that God's around you and listen to him when he wants to speak with you? And I think that if we're able to sit still, then we'll be able to pick up on his guidance that much more. And then we're not going to have to be Odysseus. We're not going to have that degree of anguish. Sure, we've made mistakes in the past, right? But we can't live in the past. We need to just be intentional. We need to sit in silence. We need to limit our distractions and know who God is through the different facets in which we can get to know him. And I think that's what I've been thinking about recently in regards to hell is, living this unintentional life or living this disobedient life and then meeting God and seeing what could have been. And I hope that this video can be a wake-up call. God knows that I need a wake-up call. And so this video is just as much for me as it is for you. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, guys. Peace.